and dive into our first story here. We're going to get into this story about Nikki Haley and Marianne Williamson. So let's start with Nikki Haley. I mean, neither one of them are having a good week. Nevada actually decided to do something a little bit different. They decided to have an actual caucus, and they're also having a primary. They split the days. It's a whole doozy. But in the Nevada caucus earlier this week, apparently Nikki Haley did lose, which was expected. But what's interesting is that Donald Trump was not on the ballot in Nevada. Remember, they decided to remove him. Remember that? But Nikki Haley lost. So who did she lose to? This is very, 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 very embarrassing. Simon Eteba actually tweeted this. We're going to get into this clip here. A bad night for Nikki Haley. Let's go.
This is an absolute miserable failure by Nikki Haley and her campaign team. And just to make sure people are realizing the gravity of this, so Nikki Haley loses to President Trump by more than 30 points in Iowa, and she declares victory. She loses by double digits with 70% of her votes coming from non-Republicans in New Hampshire, declares victory. And now Nikki Haley has lost to none of the above in Nevada in the statewide primary. Now, important to remind people is
okay, so 63% voted none of these candidates. So it's one thing for her to lose to Donald Trump. Obviously, I expect Donald Trump to have higher support than Nikki Haley. I told you before, she does not actually have strong support within the Republican Party. This is what I tried to forewarn people about. But how do you lose to none of these candidates? None of these candidates received 63%. 63%.
Addison pointed out before it cut away is that the caucuses, Nevada caucuses, where 100% of the delegates are being awarded, is tomorrow on Thursday. So make sure you're showing up to vote for President Trump. But here's the thing, Bianca, if you look forward, it gets even worse. Polling shows that Nikki Haley is trailing by massive margins in South Carolina. And now we have polling coming out from the Super Tuesday states on March 5th, where she's losing by 70 in Texas, losing by 70 in California. Nikki Haley needs to drop out, get behind President Trump now. This is an absolute miserable.
So, yeah, it's pretty bad for Nikki. I don't know why she's still trying to stay in this race. She must still have a lot of money to be able to do so. Even MSNBC, they were cracking jokes about this as well. And, you know, a lot of the liberals have actually been the liberal media has actually been somewhat favorable towards Nikki Haley because they just want anyone other than Donald Trump and someone who is a part of the status quo. So listen to this. This is from MSNBC, also picking fun at none of these candidates.
Haley, without Trump's name even on the ballot, still loses to the none option by better than 2-1. So that is a tough reality for her. Trump isn't even on the ballot, and she loses. And it's a closed primary, so it really reinforces what we've been seeing, that when you're just talking about Republican voters, she's really getting clobbered with Republican voters. It's independents and Democrats that keep.
And this is exactly what I told you guys before the primaries even started. What I told you is that if you actually talk to people, you will see that Nikki Haley didn't have strong support among the Republican voters. A lot of her support was coming from registered independents. And also there were Democrats that were voting for Nikki Haley. So people kind of saw Nikki Haley as like, wait a minute, we know what's happening here. This is the Democratic Party trying to push this woman forward, right? We see what you're doing. You're just trying to make it so that Donald Trump doesn't get in. So it didn't work. And I told you guys, even though she had somewhat of a stronger showing in New Hampshire, I still told you guys once we got to the other states, this was going to be very problematic for Nikki because you're going to be able to see that she actually does not have that support among the Republican base. Now, Nikki Haley has responded since she received those poll results from Nevada. Let's dive into this interview here.
My next guest wants to be the person that unites America and preserves its future and for future generations. I want to bring in now 2024 presidential candidate, former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ambassador, there's a lot to cover on the economy and some other top issues, but of course, I've got to start with Nevada, because listen, all the headlines showing that it was an embarrassment for you. What do you make of that? What happened there? And how does your campaign take that?
Well, I think you can look at any of the stories prior to this. I mean, we always knew Nevada was a scam. Trump had it rigged from the very beginning. There are multiple press stories on that. The GOP chair had been indicted, and they wanted us to pay $55,000 to just participate in their caucus. So we didn't spend a day or a dollar there. We weren't even worried about it. It's why we haven't talked about it.
But here's the thing, guys. Donald Trump doesn't stop voters from vote. He didn't stop the voters from voting for Nikki. That's the thing. If people really want you, Nikki, they will still vote for you.
Focus is on South Carolina, going into Michigan, going into Super Tuesday. Those are the places that we're worried about. We're not focused on Nevada. All right, let's talk about, never were.
All right, let's talk about the issues then. Okay, beginning of the year, this is fantastic from AP. Who want the government to, what things that people want the government to work on. And what I love about this is it's a sliding scales that shows what's moving and what's not moving. Always at the top is the economy. And let's talk about that for a moment, because in September, you put out an economic proposal, right? You call it the Freedom Plan. And it included a lot of things, the elimination of the federal gas tax, the reduction of income taxes, make small business tax relief permanent, and the certain tax deductions like SALT. With all due respect, these are sort of bumper sticker things. And at this stage of the campaign, can you articulate how this puts money in someone's pocket, the average person out there? How do they really benefit from this? Because, again, they've heard it all before, and it's not resonating like maybe it had in the past.
People want to know how they're going to pay for these groceries, Nikki. The grocery store prices are high, and the things that Nikki offered doesn't really do anything.
Well, I think let's look at where we are. Look at where we came from. So everybody says we had a good economy under Trump. But at what cost? He put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years.
Pause. Let me say something here. When she says he put us $8 trillion in debt, she's not talking about us. She's talking about the deficit. She's talking about the budget. So again, they're going back to the deficit in the budget. People need to learn MMT, modern monetary theory. There is no such thing. The debt ceiling is a myth. The debt ceiling is a myth. The government can print money like it's always done before. So this is what people have to understand. So when she says he put us, I'm sitting back and I'm like, well, no, he didn't put me in that position. He didn't put me in that position. He didn't put you guys in that position. She's talking about an imaginary ceiling that doesn't even exist. The average American is not thinking about that. The average American is not sitting back at home saying, oh my God, you know, it's a damn shame that deficit is so high. We got to take care of that. No, the average working class American is trying to figure out how they're going to take care of their needs, how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to pay for these high ass grocery store prices. So this is where a lot of times, a lot of these politicians, particularly the ones that are career politicians, they get lost in the sauce, meaning that they say things that may work for their circle, their politician friends. But for the average working class American, they're not thinking about those things.
Biden turned around and doubled down and put us in even more debt. Our kids are never going to forgive them for that.
If the country had to shut down, one second, if the country had to shut down because a pandemic came out of left field, no one knew what it was, but the whole world shut down, would you, as President Haley, put any money into the economy? Would you do any deficit spending, or would you say, no, I won't, because a large chunk of what you're putting on Trump's plate came from an emergency that happens every 100 years or so?
Well,
no, Charles, it was only 25% of that was COVID. And not only that, they didn't even do it well. One out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. Over $500 billion in corporate welfare went out during COVID. I would not have given all that corporate welfare. I actually resigned from the board of Boeing because they wanted a government bailout, and Trump supported it. We don't need corporate welfare. That's what went wrong. They had.
In other words, Nikki Haley would have said, fuck them kids.
no accountability in that. They put out corporate welfare. That's not how you get a country through a crisis. The way you get a country through a crisis is you reduce the size of the federal government. That's why we want to take as many federal programs as we can and move them down to the states. That will reduce the size of the federal government, but it will empower people on the ground. Think healthcare, think welfare, think education, think mental health. If you cut those strings and send it down to the people, that's what really makes things work. When you go into every agency, I'll do what I did as governor, send people into every agency to clean it up, pull down old regs, pull down bureaucracy, get rid of problem children, get rid of programs that don't belong. Government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And now you've got all of this corporate welfare that we're seeing from both Trump and Biden. It's a problem. Look at the CHIPS Act. I opposed the CHIPS Act because you basically gave, all of this money to companies to build, to manufacture chips, but you didn't stop them manufacturing in China. So it made no sense. It didn't have any sense to it.
Let me jump in for 1 second.
Subsidies from the inflation.
The reason why Nikki Haley is not doing well is because she is a George W. Bush style Republican, which is no longer fashionable. Okay. All this gibberish that she was just talking about, again, the average working class person is not wanting to hear this noise. You have to deliver directly to the people, and you cannot do it through all this jargon that a lot of people don't really understand. That's just the reality. So Nikki's basically saying if we were to have another pandemic, she's letting you know you're not going to get any type of stimulus checks from her, basically. Right. So that's what she's telling you. Here's the problem with what Nikki Haley is saying. This country has already decided to send $17 billion to Israel to help them continue a genocide against the Palestinian people. But when it comes to helping the American people, Nikki Haley's statement is part of the problem. People see billions of dollars going out the door. So she's talking about a deficit ceiling, which is a myth. She's talking about the budget of the country, and we see billions going out the door. So the thing is, if you have $17 billion to give to Israel, you have $17 billion to give to people in the need of a pandemic. But she's sitting up here letting you know that if she was president, she would not do it that way. She would push it back on the states. The federal government has more than enough money, ladies and gentlemen. The federal government has a defense budget that's over $800 billion. It has increased throughout the years. Even when we were at war with Iraq, even when we were in war with Afghanistan, the defense budget was never that amount. So you can see what's really happening here, people. This is why she is losing. People do not want, and I'm not Republican or Democrat, I'm a registered independent, but people nowadays do not want any more of these wars. You talk to the average person, they're tired of the money going to the wars. They're tired of money leaving this country, leaving our hands and going to someone else instead of helping the people here. So the reality is you are losing, Nikki Haley, because you cannot relate to the average working class American and their needs. That is why you are losing. And I'll show you this as well. South Carolina coming up right around the corner. 2024 South Carolina Republican primary. Donald Trump has 68% in South Carolina. Nikki Haley has 31%, and it's her state. Now, I told you guys before, I lived in South Carolina. I'm going to tell you again, a lot of people in South Carolina like Donald Trump. Not so much Nikki Haley. Hell, people didn't like her when she won. I just remember all this stuff. We've talked about this before in the show. People didn't really like her when she won. Won for governor, sorry, for those who are not aware. But the thing is this. Nikki Haley is going to lose in South Carolina. She's losing in Texas. Nikki Haley obviously should drop out at this point. So what you need to ask yourself is this, ladies and gentlemen. Why is Nikki Haley still staying in this race? What's the plan for Nikki Haley? Do you think she's staying in this race in the event that Donald Trump is arrested and goes to jail? What kind of deal has been made with Nikki Haley? We all should ask this question. But Nikki did not do well in Nevada. I'm telling you, she's not going to win in South Carolina. I've been calling it. And now we move on to Marianne Williamson. For those who are not aware, Marianne Williamson has decided to suspend her campaign. Let's go ahead and get into her exit speech here. It's titled "Much to Be Grateful For."
I read a quote the other day that said that sunsets are proof that endings can be beautiful too. And so today, even though it is time to suspend my campaign for the presidency, I do want to see the beauty, and I want all of you who so incredibly supported me on this journey, as donors, as supporters, as team, and as volunteers, to see the beauty too. There is so much for us to take from this, and that includes knowing that we laid it down in ways that we should all be proud of. We spoke for those who could not speak for themselves in this society. We spoke for those whose lives are falling apart, at least indirectly, because of bad public policy. We spoke of those who are struggling because of environmental crises, because of racial crises, because of criminal crises, because of economic crises.
And all that speaking led to nowhere, because here's the thing. We told Marianne earlier on when she announced she was running for president through the Democratic Party that it was a waste of time, money, and resources. And the reason why, and by we, I mean those of us at RBN, the reason why we said that is because we saw what the Democratic Party did to Bernie Sanders 2 election cycles in a row. So the DNC can change the rules, which I warned you they would do. They can change the rules whenever they want to and make it so that the person that they want will be the nominee. So Marianne, instead of doing the dirty break, which at one point she was talking about, possibly considering, instead of doing the dirty break and running as an independent, she decides to leave altogether. So the message that she's telling you about in this video, it all just got lost because the reality is you didn't carry the message on. If you would have dropped out of the Democratic Party and said, like RFK Jr. did, and said, that's it, I'm running as an independent, then you can continue to carry on that message. But now it's just, but she still gets to write a book. I'm pretty sure there's a book coming out.
We did what we could to shed some light in some very darkened times. For that, I will always be so grateful. I take memories in my heart that will last forever. And particularly for those of you who are young, who felt that in this campaign you saw hope, I want you to remember that that which is most important does not end on this day. The story itself is so long, the American story. The arc of history is what matters. And the ideas that we stood for, the ideas that are articulated, ideas you can still go to Marianne2024.com and you can read those issues pages. You can think about running yourself. You can think about being part of the longer story of American history. And no, not every individual effort succeeded for everyone who ever tried to make some progress. But anytime we put out that ripple of hope, anytime we put out any good idea, anytime we shed light in a darkened sky, then that light will remain and the darkness shall be less.
Not necessarily, because I want to use the example again of Bernie Sanders, someone who actually was able to mobilize thousands of people across this country in 2016 and in 2020. The moment Bernie Sanders walked away from his campaign, he left his base and went back to business as usual as a senator. And so you had all of these people that were passionate, and not everyone who voted and supported Bernie Sanders was a progressive, by the way. I don't know if everyone's aware of that. Not everyone who supported Bernie Sanders was a progressive. I met people, particularly out here in Massachusetts, I met people that were independents that came out and supported Bernie Sanders just on the Medicare for all, the healthcare issue alone, right? Some of the people that voted for Trump in the general actually supported Bernie in the primary. These are the kind of things like some people don't really want to talk about. They don't really want to hear it. But the thing is this. The moment Bernie Sanders walked away, There was no more light to remain. It's just gone. There's no leader. There is no progressive movement. I don't care what people are telling you. There isn't. So what happens to the people that Marianne mobilized? See, this is the question I always get back to. When your campaign is over, you suspend your campaign. And I asked Cornel West this question yesterday as well. That video posted to my channel earlier this afternoon. So if you haven't seen that interview, make sure you check that out. Where does all that energy go after the campaign ends? How do you continue the movement when the campaign is over? And what I've seen a lot of times is a lot of these people, they say we're doing this movement, we're doing a political movement across the country, but the moment the campaign is over, the movement doesn't continue because the leader walks away. And the energy has nowhere to go. And when energy has nowhere to go, it dies. This is something that you should be asking everybody who's running for office. Some of you that watch me, you support RFK. You know I do not support the dude, but you should ask him that question too. In the end, when this campaign is over, where does this movement go? Where does the energy go? What happens from here?
So you go forward and you take it from here, and I will be with you in whatever way unfolds for me. This one campaign is over now, but that larger arc of American history, it goes on. And it is my deepest hope that we in some way contributed to that larger story. And if you feel that it did, if you feel that you have a deeper appreciation of the promise of America and of your responsibility to do something about it, to bend that arc in the direction of greater justice, greater hope, greater inspiration, and greater life for the millions and millions of people who live in this country or are affected by our policies around the world, then this campaign will have succeeded. And for that, I thank all of you who helped it succeed. I take your love with.
How does the campaign succeed if you suspend the campaign, though? Like, this doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't succeed. I don't understand that at all. Like I said, if you are not carrying on the movement, if you're not carrying on this coalition that you fostered, no, it doesn't succeed. That energy has to go somewhere else.
I take your support with me, and I know that, as with every ending, it's always a new beginning. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I bless you. We bless this country, and let's also bless this world.
So I'm just thinking about all the money and resources. Like, I'm just thinking about, because all the grassroots, again, what did I tell you guys? What did we say at RBN? All the money and resources that is wasted. That's the thing. And so you got people out there that are grassroots, and they're the ones that are giving the donations. They're giving those small dollar donations. And like I said, at the end of the day, it has nothing to go back to. There's nothing there. People have wasted their money. All of the millions of dollars that went to Marianne Williamson's campaign could have gone to mutual aid. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but we could be building clinics for people. You guys realize this? With all the millions of dollars that is spent towards these campaigns, we could be building clinics for people in communities, particularly rural areas that don't have a hospital or a clinic. We could be housing people, feeding people. That's right, Brennan, the Black Panthers, right? They knew this. They knew this. This is exactly what. So when those of us, a lot of times at RBN, when we tell you guys, like, organize, mobilize within your community and don't donate the money. Notice I never tell you to donate money. I never tell you to donate to a politician, because when I look back and I see Bernie Sanders had over $200 million that was donated to him, and those mainly small dollar donations, I just want to slap myself, because I'm saying we could have taken that money and we could have actually made significant change for people's lives in this country. But instead, it was spent on the campaign. It is the end for Marianne And also, we might as well also say it's the end for Nikki too, even if she doesn't want to accept it. All the money that goes into these campaigns, we could have already built some of the things that we're asking for.